The mansion stood on the edge of the Sandton Hills, glowing under the golden evening sun. Cars worth millions lined the driveway, guards in black suits stood by the gates, and inside, laughter echoed from the grand hall where a charity dinner was taking place. But outside those shining glass walls, by the tall iron gate, stood a beggar barefoot, dusty, and trembling. His clothes were torn, his beard was rough, and in his eyes lived a sadness deeper than hunger. He stood still, watching through the bars, staring at a face on one of the banners by the gate, the face of the man hosting the event, Mr. Donovan Mthembu, South Africa's youngest billionaire, the man known for saying, "Kindness is a currency only few can afford." Security guards frowned. "Hey, you there," one shouted. "Move away from this gate." But the beggar didn't move. He kept staring at the banner, whispering something under his breath. The guard, annoyed, stormed toward him. "I said move. You're spoiling the view." Inside the mansion, the rich and powerful toasted to success. Cameras flashed. Music played. But outside, something strange was unfolding. The beggar fell to his knees and began to cry. People driving past slowed down to look. Some laughed. Some filmed. The guard reached for his radio and called the gatehouse. "There's a madman here," he said. "Should I remove him by force?" That was when a young man in a black suit, the billionaire's personal assistant, Ethan, walked out to the gate. "What's happening here?" he asked, his voice cold. "This man," the guard said, "refuses to leave. Says he must see Mr. Mthembu." Ethan's lips curled. "Tell him Mr. Mthembu doesn't speak to beggars." He turned to the old man. "Move now, old man. You don't belong here." The beggar raised his head slowly. His voice was weak but steady. "I know him," he said. "Please, tell him Simon is here." The name made Ethan pause for a moment. "Simon?" But he brushed it off. "You think I'll believe that? Mr. Mthembu doesn't know people like you." He signaled the guards. "Remove him now." As the guards dragged the beggar away from the gate, one of the expensive cars suddenly stopped by the entrance. The tinted window rolled down and a calm, deep voice spoke. "Wait." Every guard froze. It was Mr. Donovan Mthembu himself. He stepped out of the car slowly, wearing a white suit and a gentle smile. He looked at the beggar long and hard, and for a moment, the world went silent. Then he said words that made everyone's hearts stop. "Don't touch him." The guards froze. Ethan looked confused. The beggar trembled. The billionaire walked closer, his eyes never leaving the man's face. "Sir," Ethan stammered, he was disturbing. "Quiet," Donovan said softly, but firmly. "You have no idea who this man is." The crowd of onlookers that had gathered by the gate began to whisper. Donovan knelt down beside the beggar and touched his shoulder gently. "Simon," he said, his voice breaking. "After all these years." Gasps filled the air. Cameras from the media turned toward the gate, capturing every second. Simon, the beggar, could hardly lift his head. "You still remember me," he whispered. "How could I forget?" Donovan said. "You're the reason I'm alive today." The assistant and the guards exchanged shocked looks. Everyone stared in disbelief. The billionaire helped the beggar up with his own hands, the same hands that once signed deals worth billions. He turned to the stunned crowd and said, "Before any of you judge a man by his clothes, remember, the same man you push away today might be the one who saved you when you had nothing." He took off his own suit jacket and wrapped it around Simon's shoulders. "Bring him inside," he said. "His family." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Cameras flashed. Reporters rushed to ask questions. But as they entered the mansion, Ethan's face turned pale. He didn't understand who was this beggar really. That night, while the guests whispered and stared, the billionaire cancelled the entire event and asked everyone to leave. He told Simon to sit in his private dining room. The smell of roasted meat and fresh bread filled the air. "Eat," Donovan said. "You haven't eaten well in years." Tears rolled down Simon's cheeks. "I didn't come for food," he said softly. "I came to give you something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old, faded letter. The paper was torn at the edges. "I kept it for 25 years, Simon whispered. Donovan looked confused. "What is this?" Something you were never meant to find, Simon said. But now, the truth can't wait any longer. The room went cold. Donovan slowly unfolded the letter. As his eyes scanned the paper, his hand began to shake. The color drained from his face. What is this? He whispered. Simon lowered his head. The truth about your father. The billionaire's heart pounded. My father died in an accident. Simon shook his head. No. He didn't. Donovan's eyes widened. What are you saying? Simon looked up, his voice trembling. Your father was murdered. And the man who did it is still inside this mansion. The chandelier above flickered. The music in the next room stopped. Outside, thunder began to roll. Donovan froze, his breath shallow. What are you talking about? Who? Simon leaned forward and whispered something into his ear. Donovan's face turned pale as ice. He stood up slowly, eyes burning with disbelief. That's not possible. Simon nodded sadly. You've been living under the same roof with your father's killer. A crash of thunder shook the windows. Donovan turned toward the door, and standing there, watching them quietly, was Ethan. His lips curved into a slow, chilling smile. Now you know, Ethan said. And the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the mansion as thunder rolled over the hills. The lights flickered back on a few seconds later, but something had changed. The air felt heavier, colder, tense. Ethan was still standing by the doorway, his smile fading slowly as his eyes met Donovan's. Ethan, Donovan said, his voice trembling with anger and disbelief. Tell me it's not true. Ethan stepped forward. His calmness was frightening. You weren't supposed to find out like this, he said quietly. Not tonight. Simon, still sitting weakly, tried to stand, but Donovan held him back. Explain yourself. Donovan demanded. What do you mean my father was murdered? What do you have to do with this? Ethan looked down at his gloved hands. Everything you own, everything you built, every breath you've taken since that accident, it all came from a lie. Donovan's voice cracked. A lie. Yes, Ethan whispered. Your father's death was staged to protect the company. He was betrayed by his closest friend. That friend took his shares, his power, and raised you as his own to keep the secret buried. Simon's eyes filled with tears. That friend's name, he said softly, was Thabo Mthembu. Donovan froze. My father? Simon nodded slowly. Not your blood father. The man you call father was your real father's business partner and the one who caused his death. Donovan's mind went blank. The man who raised him, who taught him to be ruthless, who built his empire, wasn't his real father. You're lying, he shouted. You're trying to destroy everything. Simon shook his head sadly. You asked once why your mother vanished when you were 10. She discovered the truth. I was her driver. The night she tried to escape, she gave me this letter and told me to protect it with my life. Donovan's hands trembled as he held the faded paper again. Tears blurred his eyes. All this time, my whole life has been built on a lie. Ethan looked away, his expression unreadable. He adopted you because of guilt. He thought raising you would wash away his sin. But he couldn't bear your mother's memory. That's why he told you she abandoned you. The silence was thick. Then, Simon's voice broke through softly. You can't fight truth forever. The more you hide it, the more it finds its way back. Donovan's legs gave way. He fell into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Everything he thought he knew was gone. Ethan turned toward the window. Rain began to fall outside, hitting the glass like tapping fingers. You think you're ready to face this truth, but it's heavier than you imagine, he said. Because the people who helped Thabo, they're still here. Some of them are in your company. And one of them, he paused, looking back, is sitting in this room. Simon coughed, his voice weak. Ethan, you were one of them. Donovan looked up sharply. What? Ethan's silence said everything. I was young, Ethan said finally, his tone breaking for the first time. I didn't kill anyone. But I helped hide things I shouldn't have. Thabo promised me a future, money, power. I didn't know what it would cost. Donovan stood up slowly. And now? Ethan's eyes watered. Now I'm haunted by every lie I told. I tried to protect you, Donovan. You became a better man than he ever was. You gave people jobs, built schools, fed the poor. You became everything your father destroyed. I didn't want the truth to ruin you. Simon sighed deeply. Truth doesn't ruin. It reveals. Thunder crashed again, shaking the glass. Donovan looked between the two men, one who had lied to protect him, and one who had suffered to tell him the truth. He felt his anger fading into something deeper, something heavy, painful, but freeing. He walked slowly toward Ethan. You should have told me. Ethan bowed his head. I was afraid you'd see me as your enemy. Donovan placed a hand on his shoulder. Maybe once I would have. But tonight, I see you're just a man who lost his way, just like my father did. Ethan's eyes widened. You're not going to fire me? No, Donovan said quietly. I'm going to forgive you. Simon smiled faintly through his tears. Your real father always said forgiveness is the only wealth that grows when shared. Donovan nodded slowly. Then I'll honor him by living that way. He turned toward Simon. You've carried this pain too long. From today, you'll never live on the streets again. You'll live here. With me. You're not a beggar, you're my family. The old man wept openly, falling to his knees. God bless you, my son. I only wanted you to know who you truly are. Outside, the rain began to slow. The mansion, once full of pride and noise, felt peaceful for the first time in years. Ethan wiped his eyes. What will you do now? Donovan looked out the window at the dark, quiet city below. I'll rebuild, he said softly. But not for fame. For truth. For love. For people like Simon, the ones we overlook while chasing power. Simon smiled weakly. Then your father didn't die in vain. For a long moment, no one spoke. The thunder faded into silence, and the rain stopped completely. Then, suddenly, a knock at the door. A maid hurried in, holding a small wooden box. Sir, a delivery just arrived. There's no name on it. Donovan frowned. He opened the box carefully. Inside was a silver key and a small note that read, If you want to know who your real father's murderer is, come to the old glass factory at sunrise. Come alone. Simon gasped. No, it can't be. Donovan's eyes narrowed. So it wasn't Thabo. The letter slipped from his hand. The silver key gleamed under the chandelier. Then who was it? He whispered. Simon's face went pale. Donovan, the truth is darker than you think. The clock struck midnight. The rain began again, harder this time. And outside the mansion gates, a shadowy figure stood under the streetlight, watching the house silently. In his hand was a photo of Donovan as a child with a message written on the back. The son must pay for the father's sins. The night felt endless. Donovan couldn't sleep. The silver key lay on the table beside him, gleaming faintly in the dim light. Every tick of the clock sounded louder than the last. The note's words echoed in his mind, If you want to know who your real father's murderer is, come to the old glass factory at sunrise. Come alone. By dawn, mist wrapped around the city like a ghostly blanket. Donovan slipped into his car quietly and drove out of the mansion without guards or cameras. The world outside was still half asleep, the streets glistening with rain. He reached the old glass factory, abandoned, silent, its windows shattered like broken promises. He stepped out, his footsteps echoing across the cracked floor. Dust floated in the air. The sun's first light cut through the holes in the roof, painting thin golden lines across the room. Then, a voice came from the shadows. You came. Donovan froze. The figure stepped into the light, an older woman with tired eyes and a face he thought he'd never see again. His voice broke. Emma, mother. Her eyes filled with tears. Yes, Donovan. It's me. He dropped the key in shock. You're alive. They told me you were dead. She nodded slowly. I had to disappear. It was the only way to protect you. Donovan's chest tightened. Protect me. From who? Her expression hardened. From the man you've trusted all these years. Donovan's stomach turned. Not Ethan again. No, she said, her voice trembling. Ethan was just a pawn. I'm talking about someone far more dangerous. Someone who pretended to love you like a son. Before he could ask, a slow clap echoed through the factory. Out of the shadows stepped a tall man in a grey coat, Mr. Daniels, the family lawyer and Donovan's godfather since childhood. His calm smile sent chills down Donovan's spine. "Well done, Thandi," Daniels said, glancing at Donovan's mother. "You led him here perfectly." "What are you talking about?" Donovan shouted. "What's going on?" Thandi turned to him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He killed your father, Donovan. And he used your father's death to control our lives ever since." Daniels chuckled softly. "I didn't kill him. Your father was a fool who got in my way. Business was war, and I only did what had to be done." Donovan's fists clenched. "You destroyed our family for money?" Daniels stepped closer. "Money was only the beginning. I built your empire before you were even old enough to sign a check. You think your billions came from your hard work? They came from his blood." Donovan's voice trembled with rage. "You're sick." "Maybe," Daniels said, pulling out a small gun and pointing it at him. "But I'm also the man who made you who you are. Everything you are, every success, every headline exists because of me." Thandi cried out. "Please, don't hurt him." Daniels sneered. "You should have stayed dead, Thandi. Now your son knows too much." Donovan's pulse pounded in his ears. He remembered his father's old words from Simon's letter, "Kindness is strength, revenge is weakness wearing a mask." He looked straight into Daniels's cold eyes. "You think I'm afraid of you? You can take my wealth, my name, but you can't kill truth." Daniels laughed bitterly. "Truth doesn't feed the hungry." "No," Donovan said, stepping forward slowly, "but it heals the broken." Before Daniels could fire, a voice shouted from behind, "Drop the gun." It was Ethan, holding a security team at the entrance. He had followed Donovan secretly after finding his car missing. In a blur of motion, Ethan lunged forward. The gun went off, the sound thundered through the empty factory. Smoke filled the air. When it cleared, Daniels was on the ground, clutching his arm. The gun clattered away. Ethan stood shaking, a bleeding scrape on his shoulder but alive. Donovan rushed to his mother, helping her to her feet. Tears of relief filled her eyes. "I thought I'd lose you again." He hugged her tightly. "Not this time, Mom." "Never again." Police sirens wailed in the distance. As they led Daniels away, he hissed, "You'll never be free, Donovan. You're still one of us." Donovan looked him dead in the eyes. "No. I'm not you. I choose light, not greed." That evening, back at the mansion, the world finally saw a different Donovan Thembu. News channels spoke of his father's real story, his mother's survival, and the fall of the powerful lawyer who tried to bury the truth. But Donovan didn't care about fame anymore. He cared about healing. He built a foundation in his father's name, the Simon Foundation for the Homeless, and made his first rule clear: no one should ever be judged by how they look. Simon, now living peacefully in the mansion, smiled as he watched Donovan give food to children outside the gates, the same gates where he was once rejected. Ethan, his shoulder bandaged, stood beside him. "You could have destroyed Daniels publicly," he said quietly. "Why did you forgive him?" Donovan looked at the sunset. "Because I've learned something powerful, Ethan. You don't heal by becoming what hurt you." He turned to Simon, then to his mother, his voice firm and gentle. "What matters most isn't how much we have, but how much we give, even to those who don't deserve it." Simon nodded with tears in his eyes. "Your father would be proud." As the sun dipped below the city skyline, Donovan whispered the same words that once began his journey. "Don't touch him, you never know who a person truly is." And for the first time, the mansion that once stood as a symbol of power became a home of peace.